안녕하세요. 인사이트 코리아입니다. 2016년 미국의 한 대학교에서 한국과 일본의 묘한 관계 변화를 다루는 재미있는 강의가 펼쳐졌습니다. 영화예술 교수인 아키라 리픽 교수는 해당 강의에서 3년 만에 입장이 180도 뒤바뀐 한국과 일본의 문화 산업에 대해 조명했는데요. 그 주인공은 바로 일본의 러브레터 그리고 한국의 겨울연가였습니다. 한류의 시작점이라고 할 수 있는 2002년 리픽 교수 역시 당시 겨울연가를 보며 폭풍 눈물을 흘렸으며 DVD에 집착할 정도로 광팬임을 드러냈는데요. 일본의 러브레터가 한국에서 큰 반향을 일으킨 지 단 3년 만에 여태까지 동아시아에서 가장 긴 영화 산업의 역사를 가지고 가장 풍부한 문화 콘텐츠를 가졌다고 자부하던 일본이 한국의 드라마 때문에 열광하게 되었다고 합니다. 과연 당시 리픽 교수는 한국의 어떤 점이 일본을 순식간에 매료시켜버렸다고 말했을까요?
I remember being in the middle of in Japan, talking to friends who were saying things like, yeah, I just watch Korean stuff now. At first I thought, that's such an affectation. You know, it's like, when I was in college, everybody started eating Thai food. You know, it was like this sense of like, it was a kind of snobbery really more than anything. And I thought, okay, right. You're Japanese, you're too cool to watch Japanese stuff, so you watch Koreans. Then at a certain point I realized, oh my God, Koreans are making these incredible blockbuster films, very high production value, incredibly charged politically, typically about the division of the peninsula. The best looking men and best looking women you've ever seen together in a film, like it's shocking. The men are all wearing makeup and women are going, they look so good. And I'm like, yeah, but he's wearing makeup, you know. It's 1995. There's a Japanese film, independent film, relatively under the radar, called Love Letter. It's the kind of film that you see and you feel manipulated. Like you leave it sort of angry, you know, like it's almost impossible to describe as a film. But a woman has lost her fiancé. He died in a hiking accident, he's a mountain climber, he dies. You could have made it a more noble death, but it's not really. He died in a mountain climbing accident. And she's trying to move on with her life. And she has a new suitor, this young, good-looking guy named Toyoka Etsu. She can't get over this loss, and so which Toyoka decides he's gonna take her to the mountain and just make her confront the place where she lost her fiancé so she can just let go and move on. The strange thing about this movie is it was successful in Japan. It did okay, but it was incredibly popular in Korea. It was incredibly popular in China than it was even in Japan. And the idea that Japan in the post-war period, especially in the 1980s, was far more developed economically than much of the rest of Asia. And so Japan had a certain kind of cultural capital. If you've seen things like Doraemon or Kitty-chan or all of this kind of cultural product that was circulating throughout much of East Asia. The Japanese film industry, as I said, had a longer tradition, a longer continuous tradition in history. And when Kim Dae-jung was elected in 1997, took office in 1998, he began aggressively to suggest that Korea had the skills, the sensibility, the right kind of orientation to have a powerful film and media culture that would show the world that Korea was democratic, that Korea was developing economically, that it was a global citizen, that it was part of the world. And he names Love Letter as the kind of film that Koreans could make and do well and repeatedly. So this film went from this very low-teen sort of film really designed for young 14-year-old boys and girls, mostly girls, but boys and girls, to suddenly being named by President of the Republic of South Korea. You know, kind of astonishing. And it was the first film that was actually shown officially in Korea once the ban was lifted. What Kim Dae-jung said was, we will lift the ban in stages of Japanese cultural products. We will start by showing those things that have great cultural value. And so, much to everyone's surprise, Love Letter, which many people in Japan would dispute has great cultural value, became the first officially shown, legally shown film. If I hadn't seen this, and I saw this clip, and I didn't recognize the Japanese, I would swear this was Korean. You think of everything in Korea taking place in the snow, right, in the mountains. And it's a very, you would think it's perpetual winter in Korea based on that, right? That kind of love and emotion and passion that emerges from those winter landscapes seems more Korean than Japanese. I mean, obviously, it snows. And I think that in many ways, Japanese weren't aware of how this was a popular film. There's no question about it in Japan. I don't think Japanese were aware as to the effect it was having outside of Japan. The Korean drama in the early 2002 called Winter Sonata. How many of you heard of it or seen it? flipped out the Japanese completely. If there was ever a time to invade Japan, it was summer of 2000. God, they were so distracted. I got there, I remember in the summer, everybody, you could not sit down, if any of you were there, you know, you could not sit down for 10 minutes with people and not start talking about Winter Sonata, you know, which was this blockbuster melodrama. I'll tell you very quickly the story. You know, this young, kind of punky Korean high school kid with a bad attitude, but looks like the lost Asian member of Duran Duran with big scars and hair like this, big pink glasses. He shows up in high school, falls in love with the smart girl, you know, who's well behaved, does well in school, and he's like this bad boy standing outside smoking cigarettes and stuff. And then he's hit by a car and killed. He's gone. Just like Love Letter, right? He's gone. And she moves on with her life. It jumps 10 years later. She's now 28 years old. She's moved to Seoul from the countryside. She's an architect, urban, smart, everything. And she's going out with his friend. So it's the same setup as Love Letter. And he's perfectly good-looking guy. I mean, you know, he's successful. He's an architect too, and nice clothes, good glasses. But something's not right. And then the guy, Bae Yeon-jun, played by the actor Bae Yeon-jun, comes back 10 years later, miraculously, but insists that he's not the same person. The first half of the series, 20 episodes, and if you haven't seen it, you should binge watch it tonight. I vowed never to watch it because I was so fed up with the craziness. I started watching it and just tears. I've never cried so much in my life. Like, seriously. It's unbelievably addictive. And the Japanese were obsessed with it. And interestingly, the Koreans are the ones that I talked to were like, okay, it's okay. It was moderately popular in Korea. Why were the Japanese so into this, right? And it's this moment, this very strange moment of intersection in which a certain kind of Japanese sentimental melodrama is playing out in Korea, Love Letter. And by contrast, Winter Sonata, which is seen as kind of standard average stuff, it was popular but not transformative in Korea, is having this, not only in Japan, but Japan was the place where it really got noticed as this inter-Asian phenomenon. It was incredibly popular in places like the Philippines and Vietnam, throughout much of the Sinophone world. It was incredibly popular. I'll show you a couple minutes of the opening, but I'll start crying, so just let me... This song became like, got into my I'll hear it on my deathbed, you know. So, you know, I'm gonna stop it right now because otherwise I'll get too deep into it and I won't be able to get, but I'm gonna show you a clip. And these urban scenes are very important. It's very important because I think for Japanese audiences, there was always this image that Korea was less developed, that China was less developed. And you see these scenes and it's urban. It's an extension of Tokyo or of Osaka. And you see the way people are dressed. And of course, every scene there's a cell phone because this is the rise of Korean electronics during this time. Really the domination. The actor who you see, Bae Yeon-jun, the Japanese nickname Yon-sama. And sama is an honorific that you reserve for like the emperor, right? And he was so popular and was doing all kinds of product placement, advertising and so forth, was criticized by Korean corporations for advertising for Sony. So he quickly switched over and started advertising for like Hyundai and other companies and so on. But he was an incredible economic force in Japan for many, many years. But this sudden sense, I think, for many Japanese to see contemporary Seoul and to realize that contemporary Seoul was developed in the way that Tokyo was. It was this shattering almost sense of reflection when Bae Yeon-jun is selling the Hyundai Sonata, right? Like the Winter Sonata, the Hyundai Sonata. It's a commercial. You can look it up on YouTube. It's really funny. He comes out looking like himself with a new scarf and he says it in Korean, so it's subtitled in Japanese. Last year we met in Winter Sonata. Let's meet again this year in a Hyundai Sonata. And you're thinking, oh my God, please, you got to stop it. But the idea that you are cultural ambassador, there was a lot of talk in the Korean media that this was Korea's invasion of Japan, that the Korean wave was a kind of almost a military phenomenon, that Koreans were now taking over. This was also the moment where Japanese begin, like the rest of the world, buying en masse Korean goods of various kinds, but not just electronics and cars that we know, but also really buying into images of Korean culture. And that Korean culture, popular culture, really becomes popular at this moment. That opening scene that I showed you from Winter Sonata, the Japanese tourists would go to that spot and they would dress up like Winter Sonata and they would take pictures kissing each other. The most disgusting thing you've ever seen in your life. It's just unwatchable. And posting pictures of themselves online, kind of acting out the Winter Sonata. So not just did Koreans establish a certain kind of presence in Japan, but Korea became this amazingly attractive place for Japanese popular culture. To this day, it continues on. And of course, we've seen it metamorphose into K-pop and Korean cinema and other aspects.
그리고 기생충이 아시아를 넘어 전 세계를 강타한 2019년, 우리는 이제 그것이 아주 작은 시작점이었다는 사실을 알게 되었죠. 드라마와 영화, 음악과 웹툰, 수많은 미디어를 휩쓸며 문화 강국으로 발돋움한 한국이 다음엔 또 어떤 분야를 휩쓸게 될지 궁금해집니다. 지금까지 인사이트 코리아였습니다. 감사합니다.